Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Monday afternoon. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Kevin Graham and the mighty Quinn. We're here to talk about Celtic as we move into the first competitive game of the new season, Flag Day, as we call the first game of the season. We're going to have a wee look at the pre-season. What have we learnt? What are we going into the first competitive game armed with? And some of the bigger topics where we bring in ambition, we bring in recruitment, we bring in the gamble of Champions League football. I'm going to start off by throwing one over to you, Quinny. Latest links. Who's the names that we're linked with at the moment? Balakwisha is still in and around the conversation. Jacob Broom, and a new one, which I think came from the pages of Seltzer here, and that is a loan deal for Manchester City's Jamai Simpson-Pussy. There's no other way to say it, gentlemen and ladies. That's his name. 19-year-old centre-half, looks like a loan deal. What do you make of the latest links, Quinny?
If in doubt, get a Man City kid in on loan. I think it's the board mantra over the last decade or so. I was quite surprised to see that. I think we're all definitely in agreement that another defender could be, there's definitely space in the changing room for one, let's just put it like that, And seeing, when I seen that we were linked to that boy this morning or last night or whenever it came out, I did think, I've maybe underestimated the fact that we've not did a loan yet, and Celtic have probably still got that itch to scratch where they just want somebody in somehow for something. And it's kind of like, it's also a different position, but it's basically the same strategy as like Alex Valle last year. Not really got capital or conviction maybe to go out and buy that player. Can you maybe just borrow one for a year in the meantime? So I don't really mind it in a lot of ways. He's actually played first team football for Man City as well. So he's not just like one of these academy fodder kids that they basically just sell into Europe and the world for FFP credits or whatever. So that's a nice kind of little extra kind of element to it. By all accounts, he's after first team football. I've not done a big deep dive on him. I'm pretty sure he's right footed. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know what the script would be with him coming in, because you were just mentioning before we came on there, I would definitely echo it. I think Trusty's had a really solid pre-season. We all know Vickers is first choice at centre-back, so a guy that is like Premier League level, you would say on paper. Who cares about upsetting the apple cart, really? It's all about raising the level, but you wonder where you would expect him to raise the level. Is it instead of Vickers? Is it next to him? So that was an interesting one. As with Brian, we seem to be lowballing that one. That's a player that I featured on Seltzer here in like the scouting series I've been doing for the last like 20 weeks or something it's amounted up to now. So a player I'm a big fan of. Not really a wingery winger, but, same as Negren in that kind of sense of like people are calling him a winger, but he's like, yeah, he can play out there. He's been all right out there, but it's not really his thing either, So, and he did get a bad injury at the back half of last year. So I do kind of understand in a way why Celtic are being a bit tentative, although I do agree with the sentiment overall that it is, borderline, disrespectful, some of the bids that have been sent so far. But back from the injury, finished the season and all the rest of it. But yeah, I quite like both those links in general. I think they're both good moves if we made them happen.
Yeah, not a wingery winger. I don't think Marco Tilio is a wingery winger, by the way, and he certainly can't go into midfield either. We're going to be getting your comments coming through. We started off by talking about a potential loan deal for a Manchester City 19-year-old who, as Quinny says, Kev, he does have first-team football in his locker. We've done pretty well, let's be honest. When we've gone to Man City in the past, we brought in Jeremy Frimpong, Dedrick Boyata, Jason Denayer. There's been a few others. I think Guidetti, Oliver and Cham came from Man City as well. And Cham, your favourite player, Kev, at the time you said he was the best technical midfielder in Scotland. Don't disagree with that. It was all about application with Cham in the end. And there's been a few others as well. And a wee bit like Quinny, I don't really have an issue with a loan. I would like it to be something a wee bit more long-term, loan to buy. It's worked with Carter Vickers. It's worked with Jota. But as we see with the kind of short-termism of a Baye deal, fairly pointless. It doesn't lead to anything, Kev. That would be my only issue with this move for Simpson-Pussy. He's muted because he was going to laugh when I said Pussy a second time in the same show. There you go.
No, I wasn't. I was actually moving my microphone about, so I didn't want to rattle everywhere. I think for safety reasons, I'm just going to call him JSP, if you know him. It's just another body in the door. Obviously, Rodgers doesn't trust your Welsh, and He's already got rid of Narovski and Lagerbielka. It's just another body in the door. Man City will want guaranteed minutes. So what does that say for Trusty and Scales, or even CCV towards the end of the window? I still think there's a wee question mark over CCV, but nothing seems to have came to that yet. But again, we've done well with this tie-up with the Man City group. But as I say, just a body in the door. Probably be there with Dane Murray as the 4 centre, the 5 centre halves. It could come in and he could be better than Trusty and Scales. I mean, you have to have a look at, I think, Trusty and Cameron Carter-Vickers at this precise moment of time are our partnership. But it's a strange move, because he doesn't look like he's coming in to be first choice. And I think that's the problem that we've had this summer, that we've brung in nobody, well, apart from Tierney. But everybody seems to be coming in, we're going, are they going to walk into this team? Are they going to improve the team? The bottom line is, since I walked out of Hampden, we've done nothing to actually improve the side apart from Tierney. Absolutely nothing. So,
and the work for Tierney was done in January. To bring him in. Listen, I think when you're talking about bringing in this player, there are a few points that you have raised that I think are pertinent. The first one is, obviously, we're not going to be running with 6 centre-halves. We've already cleared the decks with Lagerbielke and Navrosky leaving the club. I watched the game again this morning against Al Ahly, because when it was live on Saturday night, we were at Barazat and Design for the Scottish film premiere of Ange and the Boss. I'll come back to that, and there's actually a deep dive into the film with a review and an interview with the 2 guys responsible for making it, which will land on the channel later on this week. But when I was watching it, obviously live, I watch it differently. I watched it again this morning. It's my view that Stephen Welsh should leave Celtic for the benefit of his own career, but also because if he was going to make it, he would have done it by now, and he hasn't. He hasn't made it as a Celtic player, insofar as I know he's played over 100 games, but he's not one of the guys that's a go-to. He's not going to be a first team pick, a first choice. He actually played all right. When I watched the game back, I thought he played okay. He was really strong in the tackle. But he, I think, will move out. It's pretty clear, Quinny, that Brendan Rodgers does like Dane Murray, and quite right. We're investing a wee bit of belief into a young player coming through, and we've been shouting and screaming for that. So that's great. On the left-hand side, it's the Trusty Scales toss of a coin, and I agree with you, Quinny. In terms of pre-season, Trusty has played well. I think that, people that say pre-season is a pointless endeavour, see, for guys like Trusty, I think he had a massive point to prove. He got plenty of minutes. That game against that Al Ahly, one of the things that I really liked about that match, as pointless as it was, being a 3rd and 4th place playoff in a Como Cup, right? We're not going to batter on about that and, display the trophy next to the European Cup in the boardroom.
Release the kit.
Yeah, release the kit.
Release the Como kit.
Come back to that, by the way. That kit looked really good the other night. But Al Ahly were a very physical, aggressive side, very strong side. And that was the kind of challenge I wanted to see Trusty come under. I wanted to see him getting battered about, see how he stood up. And I think he did pretty well, actually, watching the game back. Scored a goal, obviously. But I do think in the back of your mind, even if you were to run with the 4 that I've mentioned and Welsh leaves the club, there is always that niggling doubt about CCV and how many games he's going to miss in a season. And we know that he's missed big matches when he's missed cup finals. He's missed Champions League games through injury. So again, going back to your original point, that would be another reason to say, right, here's a 19-year-old who might turn into Jason Denayer. He might turn into Dedrick Boyata. But let's just bring him in. And it's a bit of a low risk, but it's another body, as Kev says, in the door, whereby, you could give him game time and he will potentially impress enough that you might want to sign him in the future. But I think the key element of this move is CCV and the fact that we really don't know how many games he's going to play this season.
Yeah, it seems to be the kind of recurring thing. I remember speaking about this with you on the channel about a month ago or so, talking about any links that were kind of circling around Vickers at the time. And I think, like he's firmly like our player, and, we all back him to the hilt and all the rest of it. But as you were talking there, I was thinking there may be this kind of plan or this kind of thing we see unfold this season where we do wrap CCV a bit better up in cotton wool to make sure he can play the matches that he normally misses, like we're probably planning on doing with Tierney anyway, and everyone expects us to kind of get to doing with McGregor. So we might have this kind of duality in that sense with some of the squad, in terms of like, you just know, maybe those 3 guys And, you know, I'm not saying McGregor should be in that batch, but, you know, just with age, everyone always puts him in that category, don't they? So, you know, is that maybe something that they are thinking about in terms of squad management wise? And if that is the case, then yeah, like you say, a guy like GSP could be, you know, quite a low risk, low cost insurance
Jasper.
policy for that.
Can we call him Jasper? There you go. There's his new nickname, Jasper. No, absolutely. But I think you also point out something really interesting there. When we're talking about quality of the starting 11, that's just the start of it. That's just the beginning of this process, because there's 3 guys there that you are going to manage this season. And it is based on facts. It's based on the fact that Kieran Tierney and CCV have had a lot of injury issues in the last, let's say, 3 seasons or longer in Kieran's case. Then you look at Callum McGregor, the amount of games he's played, the succession plan that isn't as clear as it probably should be with Callum McGregor, and the fact that he shouldn't really be expected to play 45 plus games a season at this stage of his career with this level of football in his legs. And it leads us on to 2 other guys. If we're talking about Jasper coming in for Man City, it leads us on to who would the backup be at left back, who would the backup be for Callum McGregor. But straight off the bat, Kev, we're not talking about 11 players here. We are talking about 14 players before we even start looking at wingers and backup strikers. And this is why your core group isn't 11. We can't focus on the 11. We need to focus on 18 and make sure that the 18 are good enough to step up, because they will be required in the big games this season if we do get through to the Champions League stages.
Aye, it's a squad game, and this is the problem that we've got. And there seems to be, at this precise moment in time, as we look at it, without us having any sort of knowledge whatsoever of what's happening in the background, you just have to have a look. Since January, we have seemingly actively self-sabotaged ourselves by selling our best players and not replacing them. And you look at the links, and again, rumours are rumours. They're exactly that. We didn't care if they've got any basis or no. But everyone's between 1 and 3 million. At this point last year, they're between 1 and 3 million, and they're either in the last year of their contract, right? So there seems to be a profile of player that we're looking at for whatever reason we're actually looking at it. At this point last season, Paul, your notes would probably tell me if we're right, we had already been linked with Engels at £8-9 million.
Mm-hmm.
There's no link whatsoever to a player that's playing in a decent league. There's no link. It's punts. There seems to be an absolute, at this precise moment in time, seems to be a bit of self-sabotage. That we're being really, really risk averse. We've went back, we've reversed, and we went right. We're going to be really, really risk averse again. We are going to not budget for getting in the Champions League, which we didn't anyway. Eh? So we haven't replaced Kyogo. We're going into a game on Sunday where our best striker is going to have to play on our left wing, and James Forrest is our best right winger at 34. Sorry. And we've got £110 million into the bank. No, that can change very, very quickly, right? That can change very, very quickly. But at this moment in time, you go like that, we're regressing at an awful rate here, and we didn't seem to be doing anything about it.
It's that balance, Kev, isn't it? As the money goes up and the quality goes down, and that's why we're frustrated.
I mean, right, a guy for the Man City academy, he's going to have a certain level of football, eh? But everybody that you're getting linked with, you're going like that. That's a bit of a punt there, eh? There is. I was kind of hoping that we were going to go for guys at 23, 24 that had played in the Champions League for other top 4 teams in the Champions League. That level of guy. But now we seem to be scouting the Serbian second division to see if we can get anybody that can actually kick a ball in a straight line.
Who was the last Serbian that played for Celtic? And was he any good?
Skepanovic.
Haxa.
He was half Serbian speed, was he? No? It just seems puzzling and laughable. It is laughable, really, that I'm still in the same place where I was when I left Hampden after the cup final.
And by the way, Kev,
I've got no time for this nonsense anymore. I've got no energy for it anymore.
Well,
it's just I'll turn up on Sunday and see what happens.
It can be energy sapping. That's the problem, because it seems pretty clear to a lot of people who comment on this show and contribute to Acsom what we expect as fans. Now, expectations are fine, and it comes down to this word that continually gets used by Brendan Rodgers, and it's ambition, right? So, Kev, what you're saying, a lot of people online don't like hearing stuff. They just instantly say, oh, you're being negative. You're not being negative if you just look at the facts, right? If you just look at where we are. And if you go back to January, right, because you're using January as a kind of a barometer, if you like, and how we have regressed or otherwise. If you go back to January, where were we, right? So Brendan Rodgers wanted Kieran Tierney, and he wanted him in January, and we know that now, and Kieran spoke about it at his press conference, right? We didn't get him, and we got Schlupp instead. He wanted Greg Taylor to stay. Greg Taylor left. He wanted to replace Kyogo with another striker. He had to replace him with a left winger who was already at a football club. And the other one that was pointed out to me was the goalkeeper scenario with Joe Hart. Joe Hart quite dramatically announces his retirement months in advance of that actually happening. And quite frankly, the way I'm looking at it now, and you can speculate, you're allowed to speculate. I'm not saying this is the way I'm looking at it. Sinisalo was Joe Hart's replacement, and Sinisalo was bought by the football club. That's the way I'm looking at that. And at the last minute, and we learned this through Kasper Schmeichel, not only at his press conference, but when he appeared on Stick to Football with Gary Neville, that was a last-minute deal, and that was basically the Brendan Rodgers Rolodex, and that's been confirmed as well. So maybe Brendan's looked at Sinisalo and thought, he's not had enough game time at this level. We need somebody a wee bit more assured, and Kasper Schmeichel comes in the door. So again, that's something else he's had to actually step in at the last minute and sort out himself.
Again, Paul, but there's two ways you can look at that. It could either be that Rodgers has had a look at Sinisalo and went, not really up to the level, I've got somebody there that's willing to come in, or Rodgers just thought, by the way, I think Schmeichel's going to be a good fit for us. I'm going to bring him in for 2 seasons. So we do not know the reasoning why that is, but I probably do tend to side with, I think Sinisalo has been brought in as a long-term number one.
The timing. And by the way, see, when I look at him, and again, this was evident at Ali in the game, he's very commanding. You know, it's not as if he's coming in and he's like, Barkas was virtually not there in terms of being a commanding goalie. And you need to command your area, and he very much is that goalie. Saves a penalty as well, going back, not even with hindsight, going back when to the cup final, saying he should have brought him on at an extra time for the penalty shootout and everything else. But with regards to that, so you've got Brendan Rodgers in this situation where he's banging on, and this is just what we know publicly. Quinny, this is all based on his press conferences and what he said and the timeline as well. So these are things that he said he wants, he's not got them, right? Now he's talking about quality. There was that wee issue with regards to club signing. He's now changed the language and the approach to that. Okay, it's players for now versus players for the future. And that's fine as well, because you can bring guys in and develop them. I've not got an issue with it. I think Osman's one of the guys, clearly, in this pre-season who's not ready for Celtic's first team. From what I've seen, he looks lively. He looks like he's got a bit of talent, but he's not ready for Celtic's frontline from what I've seen. And I think what you do with a guy like that is you loan him out, you develop him, he might come back a better player. By the way, that's where Johnny Kenny's at that part of his cycle. He's come back now. He's in the first team squad. Is he ready for the first team? I actually don't think he is either, but he was a guy for the future as well. So Brendan Rodgers has told us what he wants and he's not getting it. He's never going to get everything he wants. No manager ever does, really, right? Because that's just part of the battle that a manager has with a football club. But it leads us into this ambition. It leads us into the Champions League endeavours, risking the Champions League rather than going for these guys who are ready-made first-team players, Quinny. There's an element of risk with a lot of these players. Yes, Shin Yamada looks very, very good in the one half of football that I've seen him playing for Celtic. He does. Inamura, I think, has been one of the most impressive players in pre-season. But as Kev says, they wear punts. I mean, let's be honest. They're not your ready starter, oven-ready first-team players. They might come good. Nygren looks like a steal at 1.7, and Tierney is absolutely a first-team ready player. So it feels to me like we are gambling. And what it comes down to, and this is one of the bigger issues, Quinny, is who's controlling the whole situation here. Because, again, going by all the information that you get through good sources, Dermot Desmond controls everything. Dermot Desmond controls who manages the football club, and he also controls whether or not we go over a certain threshold when it comes to a transfer, right? And certain information that's been made known to Acsom would suggest that was the reason Kev's smiling, because he knows what's coming. That's the reason we didn't get Engels for 8 million quid. That's the reason we didn't get Adamida for maybe 5 or 6 million quid.
What I'm going to caveat that by actually saying this information has been put into the domain for a reason, and we've got to look at who's told those people that information to see what they're trying to cover.
Well, for me,
that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's incorrect. We just need to balance it out. We're going, well, the person that got that information and put it out in the public, that's been done for a reason by the person who told that person that information.
That's specific info. That's specific info. But then you go to the other stuff that's out in the public because Brendan Rodgers has told us about it, or Gordon Strachan's told us about it. And you talk about things like Brendan Rodgers speaking directly to Dermot Desmond this summer. Right, okay, that's fine. Then you start looking at the control and the power that Dermot Desmond has over this football club and why he has that control. Dermot Desmond is a non-executive director of Celtic Football Club. Right, okay, there's a few of them, right? But the other thing that he's got is the fact that he's the major shareholder, but he doesn't have a controlling stake in the football club. This is the important bit, right? So 34.7% of the shareholding makes him the majority shareholder, Kev. But that doesn't make him in control in any other football club, by the way, unless someone can give me an example of someone with 34.7% of the shareholding appointing managers and setting budgets and this kind of thing. Yeah, he can have a say in it, but he doesn't control the football club. But he does. This is the thing. He shouldn't, but he does. So why is Dermot Desmond interfering with football matters? Why is he interfering with who manages a football club? Now, by the way, I'm not saying it's been a disaster. Of course it's not. I'm delighted Brendan Rodgers is at the club. I was delighted when Martin O'Neill was given the job. That was Dermot Desmond, by the way. But it's got to the point now where if he decides that we're not going to go for Europe, then it doesn't happen. What's the point of having a board of directors then, Quinny? If one person controls the whole narrative and one person controls the whole scenario, you're going to have people, right, who are major shareholders, not majority shareholders, who will be very unhappy with that because they don't have a seat in the board. And they'll be feeling as though they have no control. They've got all these shares. They'll be questioning why we're not going to have an ambition. Why are we hoarding and stockpiling cash when the team on the park needs serious investment and the stadium needs serious investment? You've got to explain, maybe not to us, maybe not to the minions, but you've got to explain to the shareholders, why are you hoarding that cash, Quinny? It doesn't make sense to me. He should not be as controlling as he is at Celtic Football Club.
Yeah, and I remember, I can't remember when this conversation kind of came up again recently, but I remember going to a thing not that long ago with the Celtic Trust, and they were talking about this kind of thing and the fact that I think there's enough shares that are actually owned by fans that if all fan-owned shares were to conglomerate or amalgamate or whatever the phrase would be, then it would be actually a fan-ran club in theory. You know, there's enough of them out there, but because of, I think partly there's a lot of missing shares because when they were sold and they were issued in paper and stuff like things go missing over time or whatever. So yeah, he isn't a majority shareholder or anything like that. He's like the biggest individual that has a shareholding, isn't he? So he's kind of in there by default. And I heard someone talk about it, maybe it was on a Celtic podcast, certainly, I forget which one, talking about the fact that like for selling the club and stuff like that, how he's actually in maybe not the best position to actually like, you know, cash in on it or whatever. So I know that's something people do worry about with cash in the bank, is it's like to set us up for a sale kind of thing. But I think like you used to be able to be an owner like Desmond in the sense of like you could like football, you could like the club, and you could maybe have like one kind of hand on what the club's doing, what the policies are, the big decisions that are being made. And because football clubs used to be more like tankers, used to be like the Titanic. But nowadays, like football clubs are like speedboats. They have to be very quick to move. They have to be very agile. And everything's just, especially now with the Champions League access that we've had last year, everything just moves at a much higher pace. Like if you look across Europe, like I'm astounded this summer. It's probably the biggest summer ever for this. The amount of moves and transfer fees, the size of them, that's happening between the likes of Porto, Ajax, Bruges, Copenhagen, Nordic, all these clubs are now selling and buying players between one another for like 12 million quid, 20 million quid, 9 million quid is quite like normal. And whereas before, normally those clubs would only get those transfer fees selling to England, Germany, Spain or whatever, but they're now actually like, that's the scale that they're actually now on because they've been doing this quite proactively, player trading stuff for a number of years quite well, obviously. But we are falling behind that transfer market now because the owner Because like nowadays, the good, you can get owners that are like, you know, the supreme guy that owns the company and all the rest of it or whatever. But if they're actively like tapped into football and tapped into the football club, they can actually be a bit of an asset, because you do need to action things quickly nowadays to get deals done at the right time and to have plans executed. So it's very frustrating that it does seem to be that like Brendan Rodgers has got this soft thing, or there's a transfer kitty of like before the transfer window, where as long as it stays within these realms of no more than 5 million, or you've got a total 15 million or whatever that's been given to him, as long as you've got that, don't phone me after the Champions League qualifier. That feels just like Kev says, like counterproductive self-sabotage, because yeah, somebody mentioned the Gren comes in, the Gren adds a dimension to the squad. I think there's no denying that. But the squad is net down where we were last January, you know, even with adding the Gren in, there's no Kuhn, there's no Kyogo, Jota is out for a significant period of time, etc. So we are net down, and we, you know, the qualifier, like I've seen somebody post today, the opponents were likely to get the 5 of them. 2 of them are real banana skin potential, and the other 3 aren't really that far behind either. You know, nothing's guaranteed for us, and like the front line is really where it's, you know, causing concern and problem, because as much as Kev's saying Forrest starts at right wing, Yang's played 2 games and Yang scored 2 goals, you know, so and Rodgers has called him the starting winger, so
he has.
You know, I think that's where the anxiety comes from, is the front line, isn't it?
Rodgers is having a laugh when he says something like that. He should be having a laugh, and and like, he's a boy who we should be actively trying to punt, no on loan, but permanently.
Is he mentioning it though, Kev? Is he mentioning it to put it out there, to say to the club, look, Yang is your starting right winger? Because everybody that hears that knows that that's not acceptable.
You hope so, but I don't trust anything Rodgers says anymore.
See, that was that moment where that was that pregnant pause, Kev, deliberately left out there, because, you know, at one point I thought you were dusting down the bronze statue that's in your shed, Brendan Rodgers. It was going to be re-emerged. We were going to get the plinth out, and now you're saying you don't believe a word. I'm jesting, obviously.
No, you're not.
I'm not in the same boat, right? I actually think that he's very, very good at putting information out there. Insofar as turning the screw, if you like, without going full terminado, turning the screw on the Celtic board. And what I'm talking about with regards to Dermot Desmond is Dermot Desmond does not own the football club. He does not own the football club, yet he controls these matters that are becoming frustrations of ours, right? And that is the lack of investment in the football side of things, the lack of investment in the stadium. Why are we sitting with hundreds of money and we're not reinvesting it?
See, this is it, and that was a kind of tongue-in-cheek joke about Brendan, right? I've got a feeling this contract situation is all about Brendan, and it's all about his ego, and it could be sorted within the next 30 seconds, the next minute, if Brendan wanted it to be sorted, but he doesn't, because he wants to feel wanted. That's just my reading there.
Is he waiting as well, Kev? Is he waiting to see how much of an investment the club are prepared to make in trying to get into the Champions League stages? It sounds daft. We should just still call them the group stages. The Champions League stages.
Well, basically, she only needs to have a look at the last 20 odd years to say that we actually just maybe want to just sneak into it. Like, you should know that we have no ambition to actually progress as a Champions League team. We just want the money and want to get put out and go. That's it. There's no other ambition than that going on the last 20 odd year. What I'm meaning is, I think there's a lack of transparency with what Rodgers is saying and also what Dermot doesn't say. I think your non-executive board didn't do what a non-executive board should actually do. I don't know where you take that, because I think they've got statutes that they've got to follow. So why are they not questioning why we've got £110 million in the bank? Why are they not asking the questions? Yeah. With Dermot Desmond as well, he's got enough guys on that board and on that non-executive board that he's appointed that are quite happy to be on the committee of the golf club.
They will not rock the boat.
and they're not bothered one little bit. As long as they get their nice wee jollies every so often into Europe and that, tickets for cup finals, and the fact they can actually say, oh, by the way, I'm a non-executive director, they're not going to rock the boat. If Dermot Desmond came out and says, this is my vision for the club, then I'll go, right, fair play, big man. Let's see what you've got. But the fact is there's radio silence. So all we get is me blathering rubbish and other folk blathering rubbish about what's actually happening. Because we don't actually know what we don't actually know what's actually happening, but we're just making assumptions based on evidence over the last 20 odd years.
That's why it's no rubbish. That's why it's no rubbish, Kev, because you can take the information, you can take the experiences, and you can come to a conclusion. That's fine. That's what people do in all walks of life, and that's fine when we're talking about our football club. But that's my biggest issue at the moment. And unless there's a plan for all that money that we are hoarding, unless there's a plan, you think to yourself, it doesn't make sense. What is the plan? You don't know because they won't tell us. If you ever question Dermot Desmond, he'll just say how many trophies have we won since I got involved, since I was a major shareholder. There's a defensive kind of approach when it comes to questioning this board.
But this is not just at the board level. I think this is on every level all the way through the club.
That's the culture, isn't it? That's the culture
in the club,
yeah.
And that's actually came from the Peter Law years. The fact is, we still talk about Peter Law as if he's still got a running in the club. I've still got this vision of like 50 years' time, there's going to be a hologram of Peter Law in a cupboard somewhere at Parkhead, like Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars. And he's still going to be controlling everybody by his mind, even though he's been passed away for 100 years or whatever it is. I still believe they'll find him in a cupboard, and he's just these messages.
Is it the same cupboard that the stained glass window was in?
No, but I think there's a same. There's folk there that are too comfortable.
Yeah.
At youth development level. Getting deals over the line level as well. There's guys there that are just actually too comfortable, and they're comfortable with failure because they never actually get brought up. As Quinny rightly says, we look at Bruges, and that's what we should be looking at, Bruges, and with a far lesser budget, they're doing far greater things, and that's because we're sort of stuck where we are. And the reason that we're actually stuck is because we're in a rubbish league.
That's one of the reasons,
and we get away with it.
One of the reasons. I also think with any business, right, that a certain group of people who are the decision makers at the top level, the board and the chairman of the board, I think there's a shelf life, and I think they can take them to a certain level, Quinny, but then it comes to the point where they can't take them to the next level. And I often think about that when it comes to the Celtic board. I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression, certainly from my perspective, on Peter Law. I think what Peter Law has done at Celtic is phenomenal, but he's not beyond question. Absolutely, he is not beyond question, and he's not without his faults. What he's done, see, when you look at, we put something out on Friday night, and it was the Dark Old Days, and it was Save Ourselves, and we've been meaning to do it for a long time, and we finally got around to editing archive footage, and it was a reminder of how shambolic Celtic were back then. We had no business acumen, we had nothing on the board that would suggest that they could run a football club into a new era, and that new era was, we need an all-seater stadium. And they had absolutely no idea. And 1 minute it was Rob Royston, then it was Canvas Lang, then it was all this kind of nonsense. We're rebuilding Celtic Park. They didn't have a clue what they were doing. That is not the situation we're in now. And I've seen a few people mention it on there, and I'll bring your comments up in a second. I think if there was going to be change, it would be forced by the people who have got big shareholdings in the club, Quinny. I don't think it would be a pavement movement as it was back in the day with Save Ourselves and Celts for Change. I don't see it being a boycott situation as it became, apparent was required back in the day. I think it's more of the people who have got this shareholding in the club saying, wait a minute, why are you doing it? Why has this individual got all the control? Why is he controlling the club as if he owns it when he doesn't? And why have we got all this money in the bank when the stadium is crying out for refurbishment or even renovation or a rebuild when you come to the main stand? And we're going into a Champions League qualifier having barely spent a penny and basically playing Russian roulette with whether or not we get through.
Yeah, well, I don't really know entirely where to come back on that one, but I think the fact that, like, last year I was really hopeful that the board's greed would, like, play into all of our hands in the sense of like we're all seeing that graphic at the end of the season where Celtic made more money from UEFA or Europe than Tottenham did from winning the Europa League.
Yep.
And the Champions League group stages normally pay out quite well. It's not completely out of sync with that scale, but everything that has just went up a notch in the last year. And I was really hopeful that, they would get the pound signs in their eyes over that. And it is really hanging on the balance of the qualifiers that we've got to do. And it's really at jeopardy. The silver lining or the parachute or the safety net or whatever of the Europa League, if you don't quite make it, is even less attractive to me than it ever has been. Yeah, there's maybe more of a prospect of going deeper in the tournament now for different reasons we can talk about if he's wanted. But like financially, it doesn't move us on at all. And to come back to, I suppose, the ultimate thing here of what is our ambition in terms of how Rodgers has put it across. If you looked at our front line, you would definitely think our ambition is the Europa League and not the Champions League. And that is, again, I think that's kind of the source of all the nerves, isn't it?
No, it is. And by the way, I know we certainly with the successes we've had in recent years, you can't base every signing on a transfer fee. But if you were to look at the investment of Celtic right now, and you're looking at Nygren 1.7, Shin Yamada 1.5, Inamura 250 grand, you then start to try and gauge the level of ambition on that. You think you're not behaving like a Champions League club. Now, again, there's this other argument that's been raging on for a year about, you can sign £11 million players that doesn't guarantee success. I get that. I absolutely get that. But there's no statement of intent, Kevin. That's an issue as well. There's no statement of intent to the football department to say, we're actually serious about getting through these qualifiers. You know what, right? I think we're in a situation now where they'll push the button if we get through. They'll just push the button under 2 or 3 big signing targets, and it'll cost a few quid if we get through. Are you satisfied with that as a fan, Kev?
No, but I expected it.
You expect that's the expectation now. That's normal.
I think I says that at the end of the season. I says we'll wait and see what European competition we're in before we do anything major. But we don't need to do that. I mean, we knew for months that Kuhn was going to leave. So what you could have done, you could have brought in the 2 wingers knowing full well you were going to get a certain fee for Kuhn. You didn't need to wait for him to go. You could have started working on those deals 3-4 months ago to get the wingers that you actually wanted in, knowing full well you've got an asset there that you can actually sell, and who is willing to go, and there's interest there. These things just didn't arrive on your desk like as a surprise, going, oh, by the way, he's going to leave and we're going to get that amount of money. They know roughly how much they're going to get and what the deal's going to be. And so we just seem to be really, really reactive, risk averse, reactive.
Reactive, yeah.
And onto your point there, Kev, as well. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, onto your point there as well, Kev, Yamada said that he knew he was coming to Celtic kind of since January. He said that, it'd been opened up ages ago. So like you say, it isn't just, let's go sign him tomorrow.
If you read hipster things like The Athletic and that, these deals take months.
Are they still
hipster? Really do.
Are they hipster?
I don't know. They're on a subscription model. I call them hipsters. But these things take months, and these things didn't come as a surprise to teams unless your player goes on strike, like Newcastle are finding the new, going, oh, by the way, he's been on strike. This is quite dangerous situation now. But Newcastle should have planned for that.
Well, we should have planned with players, Kev. We've had that with players.
We should have planned. We should have knew last August, then we did know last August that Kyogo wanted out the building.
Yes.
And we should have had his replacement in January by that point. We should have started talking to his replacement in January. And we're still
who was his replacement? Was his replacement Fitzgarden? His name was connected to this football club for 4 transfer windows, and we never signed him. Quinny's laughing because it all feeds into this where it's like, right, okay, we're not being paranoid, we're not being entitled, we're not being spoiled. This is just where we are. Kyogo was, and Kev, you're quite rightly say, Kyogo, through his agency, knew that he was leaving the football club. And in actual fact, and bizarrely enough, and people probably don't want to hear this, if they got the deal done, he would have left in the summer, Kev. It took until January to get the deal done, but he wanted to leave. Yet, come January and come to where we're sitting right now, we still don't have that replacement that Brendan believes is his first team player. Yamada's been brought in.
90% of what happens shouldn't come as a surprise to the football club. That's what we've got. But we seem to act if it's a surprise, then go, right, what do we do now? And we have got a list of targets. I mean, the boy for the guy for Belgium, the winger, and that, he's been on our radar for a year. He got the injury last season, and now whatever's happened, we're no willing to pay the £5 million or the £4 million, because if the rumour is believed that anything over £3 million has to get Desmond sign off when he has a look at it, then he finds that the player's got tattoos and he doesn't sign them. That's another thing. If you believe
tattoos and Instagram.
Tattoos and Instagram.
That's Pamel's fault, though. I mean, come on.
I mean, that's how we get to 2.9 million. Then we start offering them like Pokemon cards and stuff like that.
I've heard that.
Because we didn't want to get above the £3 million, because then we need to go to the big boss man to sign it off. It's like me and my work. I can't sign off credits over £200 in case I steal them. But that's what it's like. They're going, right, no, we'll get to 2.9, and to save it going up the stairs. I mean, I think that's what we've done with Paulo Bernardo. I think we gave Benfica a Netflix password. I mean, we'll use that for a year, and we'll get that deal over the line.
As long as it was in the Celtic TV one. But what I would say, listen, we know that there needs to be a structure in place, there needs to be sign-off, but it's about doing it efficiently. It's about doing it quickly. The tattoos and Instagram ones ended me. Here we go. Some comments coming in, and then we're going to look at how ready we are. Let's just even talk about St Mirren, how ready we are for that game. What is your starting 11? There are a few there, I think, are discussion points as well. Saul Goodman, I need to double check if I'm up to date with Better Call Saul. Incidentally, I'm not sure if I've seen the latest season. I'm not getting the shiny new signing feeling with Yamada. Saw a lot of his J-League highlights. Yes, he will do a job. Yes, he's a good footballer. Still risk, though, when it's not needed. We've got cash. When it comes to that particular player and the forward situation, and let's talk about the forward situation, I'm now looking at it, Quinny, and here's where I am with it, right? So I think Johnny Kenny has done remarkably well. I think he's one of the most hard-working players in the team. He's beefed up. He's got the physicality. He'll run all night for you. He really, really presses all night long, but he's lacking a bit of quality. And he's lacking that bit of quality that we need now. There's a bit of interest from Bolton Wanderers. Apparently, they've already had 500 grand knocked back. We're wanting £1 million for him. He's a player for me that I would allow to go. Osmond, he's one for the future. Get him a loan deal. Like all the other players that are getting loaned out at the moment, there is a huge amount of players getting loaned out. And at this moment in time, Maeda's still the best striker at the football club, but he's playing left wing. So it's Ida and Yamada toying for that jersey. But I still believe Brendan Rodgers wants a first choice striker. So we would run with 3. And it would be Ida and Yamada basically trying to, get scraps from whoever the first choice is. But when we're going into the St Mirren game, the big question is, who do you start up top?
I think Adam Ida is one of the few players in the squad right now that is really crossing his fingers that pre-season doesn't mean anything, because he's not done anything in pre-season. He's looked like, compared to even Yamada's little kind of introduction cameo thing there, like below, but in terms of kind of rising through. We've seen Trusty Anamura. There's been guys that have looked the part, and some guys like pre-season isn't the best kind of judgment or whatever. I like to use Brendan's words as much as possible to kind of try and think about where we are and what he sees and thinks. And especially with Yamada saying Celtic had been kind of, talking to him since like January, December or whatever. I kind of initially thought Yamada was more of like the old replacement, like the kind of the cheap guy from who knows where. If he comes good, cool, we'll play him off the bench every week, see what happens. And Rodgers did say before, like, he wants 3 strikers and one of them to be like a kid, essentially, like a prospect that's come through the academy. We also don't have one of our own in that regard. So that's, I think, where the motivation to sign someone from another academy like Osmond comes into it. So although Rodgers has said we need to add goals into the front line, I'm not too sure he will actually get another centre forward in, unless like Osmond, and that's not because of Osmond or whatever, but it's just, I don't think he'll play what I don't think he'll, like, let's just say a new striker comes in, Ida and Yamada, and you've still got Dyson kind of floating around out there, out left wing, when most of us would probably like him through the middle. I just don't see that ever. I don't see that being the case this year. So I think the strikers we probably don't actually sign anymore, actual centre forwards. Now, will we sign someone that is going to play like right wing and replace Kuhn, but is kind of like Dyson in the sense of like if we want to, if we need to, we can play him through the middle. I think that might be kind of the way it goes. Jacob Braham has played like everywhere. Like Jacob Braham could play up front, can play in attacking mid, left wing, right wing, to maybe a bit of a lesser extent. But I think it'll be that sort of guy that we add into the front line. Ideally, there's at least two of them because of the holes that we've got and kind of how you fill them. So with all that being said, I would expect Ida to start, but Yamada does have the advantage of, you know, when we signed him, it was the break in the J League, like they take a couple of weeks off or something, or mid-season kind of break, and he is at top gear. He's at high revs already. You know, he is like already there in full season action compared to the rest of the squad. So there's something that makes me think and feel when the team sheet comes out, Yamada's name's going to be on it as it stands right now, because Ida hasn't really pulled up trees in pre-season. And alongside maybe the Alistair Johnson, the Carter Vickers crew, maybe Rodgers can dress it up within the squad or to whatever. The Ida maybe just needs another week, you know, before he's up to speed again and da whatever. So I feel Yamada's name's going to be on the team sheet, but I think the painting by numbers thing would put Adam Ida in because he's played the most and he's the big value signing. Rodgers has got his name on him, as it were, needs to justify the fee, I suppose, in some ways, and all the rest of it. So I'm quite conflicted on who actually starts, but I say my mind's eye just sees Yamada on the sheet. I can't get away from it.
I'm kind of feeling the same. Even though I think the first choice is Adam Ida for all the reasons that you've already mentioned. And also, if he doesn't start, what kind of message does that send to him as a player? He's obviously a confidence player as well. Kev, with everything said, and by the way, Quinny, you might be right about not bringing in another striker as well. When you think about the fact that Maeda can play in there, and we might be bringing in a winger who can also play in there. But when we go out to face St Mirren at the weekend, Kev, do you think Yamada could start?
He shouldn't, which is, for me, is the bigger answer that he shouldn't be starting. I agree with Quinny. I think we're going to look at the wingers rather than bringing in another striker. All intents and purposes, Dyson Maeda is the best striker in the club, and he should be starting as centre forward on Sunday if there's nobody else there. Mm-hmm. So I think that shows that our recruitment's been poor so far. The fact that we haven't got to let another left winger to bring in to move Dyson through the middle. With Yamada, I wondered how long it was going to take for him to be the saviour. And that's no a slight on the player whatsoever. And it was 30 seconds and an offside goal. Then everybody was saying, oh, this boy's got it, this boy's this and that. And it's just a desperation factor. It really is, because of the way that we're doing business. And that's it could be an absolute sensation. But for us to pin all our hopes on him at this precise moment in time is just fanciful. We know facts. Adam Ida believes that he had a great season last season, so he's likely to get the starting jersey, I would think.
Right.
That's whether he deserves it or no is another question.
There's other reasons that Quinny's covered, Kev, which I totally agree with. Yeah.
There's a whole load of that. I mean, I haven't watched a ball being kicked in pre-season. Because they're just glorified training sessions, and I've still no got there yet with them after the way that they ended the season. So,
Kev, I'm going to give you my password for Celtic TV. Watch it all back.
No, you're all right. I've got better things to do with my time. Like
phenomenal
reruns of Crossroads are on ITV4. I'm going to watch them.
Nah, didn't do that. Better Call Saul's better. So that's what we think. Quinny's going to say Yamada. Kev's saying Ida. I'm going to say Ida, based on the fact that the message it sends to Adam Ida, if he's not playing, would be counterproductive. On form, and we've only seen 45 minutes of him, Yamada, I thought he did really, really well. And by the way, that then leads us on to the wingers, because he was laid on for that offside goal by Marco Tilio, who I would have expected to have left the club by now. There's obviously a deal in the offing for Marco Tilio. I think that if we were to read anything into pre-season games, Quinny, what I've read into his performances is he's simply not at the level that we need. I watched him quite closely against Ali, and I don't think, other than that ball that he played in, and he could have played it a wee bit sooner, I don't think he did anything of note, anything positive. And it's not anything at all against the player. He's been at the football club for 2 years now. He's been loaned out. There's been some personal issues. Sometimes these things just don't work out. The reason we fell onto him is because we're so dire when it comes to numbers in the winger position. So where we find ourselves is Maeda, Yang, Forrest and Tillio. That's what we're running with. Have I forgotten it? I know Nygren can go right if required. I don't want him to. I think he's looked really good in the midfield. So as we go into the game at the weekend, Maeda's a stick on. I think most people will agree with that. Who do you pick on the right-hand side, Quinny? Does Forrest start? Does Yang start? I don't think Tillio's even in the discussion now.
I think it's a coin toss on Yang and Forrest, down to, like, you know, the number one thing I've always kind of said with Yang over the last like 12 months or so is he only needs to add in some tap-ins and set some people up for some tap-ins, and he's a very functional squad player very quickly. And that's kind of what happened. You know, there's maybe some more flashes that were a wee bit better in that hot streak that he had last season. And his involvement in preseason is just that. You know, he's putting away tap-ins, he's creating other kind of chances for other people, and he's got good energy. And Forrest, like, by all accounts, I'm hearing people say he was the best player on the pitch in a few of these matches and that sort of thing as well. I, like Kev, I've watched a wee bit more than nothing, but I've been kind of in and out of preseason just down to IRL commitments, being out and about outside and stuff, you know. So I think it's a genuine coin toss. They'll both play the match. I think there's no two ways about it. And it will just be, does Brendan want to send a message to the board? And how does he do it? Is it with Yang or is it with Forrest? You know, what one sends a message up the stairs a bit louder and a bit clearer to them that we need wingers, you know? Does he play both of them? He played Maeda through the middle just for the banter.
Just for the banter. Well, Forrest, I thought the other night looked really good on the left. He created quite a bit from the left. A lot of the crosses that he put in were from that area of the park. But I do think we'll go Maeda, Ida, and on the right-hand side, is Jamesy Forrest no unfurling the flag? Is he not at that age? I would probably play Jamesy for the start and bring Yang on for half an hour.
I think the sentiment that works well.
Yeah, Kev, what about yourself?
That scenario is more than likely what will actually happen, because I think Rodgers might actually think that Forrest would make more an impact for the bench than Yang. What I will actually say though, and this is a bit worrying, if Ida and Yang start, they've got no goodwill left with the majority of the support. And if they have a bad first 20 minutes, no being funny, it's going to be quite tough for them.
Yeah, because the last memory, if you don't include pre-season, is that cup final, and Yang's performance was really, really poor, and it stands out.
So was Ida's.
Yeah, and Ida already divides opinion, Kev. He's on a short leash, you know. He's on a short leash. You've got a guy in Johnny Kenny who runs a lot, closes a lot of people down, gives a right good shoulder badge here and there, but there's no the quality yet. He seems to get more of an easy ride of it when it comes to the Celtic fan base. So yes, there's a few questions in the front line. Midfield, where I am, having watched every minute of pre-season, guys, sometimes twice. Right, there you go. Am I getting a Blue Peter badge for that? Right. So what I would say about the midfield right now is the way I view it, Luke McKeown is now the least likely to get a start for me out of all the midfield players. I think Nygren's come in, and I thought he was coming in as a right-handed, a right winger, as it were. Nygren's come in and he's gone straight in the starting 11 for me, and he's taken Engels' jersey, who's one of my favourite players at Celtic. He's taken Engels' jersey. I think Callum McGregor obviously starts, but Bernardo is looking like he's backup. He's looking like McGregor's backup. And you start with Atati, who's been really good in the pre-season. And again, he looks as though he's leaner as well. So my starting three is McGregor in his usual position, Nygren taking Engels' space, and Rio Atati. Quinny, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the way pre-season's been shaken out. And it's great to see Nygren kind of playing in this midfield spot to give us back that kind of, you know, O'Reilly was an attacking midfielder and O'Reilly was super effective for us or whatever. But there was games where O'Reilly might have been deeper, and there was moments in matches where he would just hold the ground a little bit and whatever. So I think Nygren's just a little bit more front-footed than O'Reilly. So it's a nice kind of like evolution in the midfield, as it were. It's much more attacking. And our main problem last year at home, or domestically, I should say, is playing against like a 9-man wall in front of the box. And to kind of break that down, you need those guys that will pop up in different little spaces or whatever. So I think the Negren is a bit of a revolution in the midfield, and it really does kind of hold the mirror up to what Engels, Bernardo don't give to the midfield, you know, and where they've kind of, I don't want to necessarily say let us down, but where we've been missing a trick with those kind of guys over the last year and a bit. I make you quite right on McKeown, but McKeown's kind of like, I think he'll play like 90% of matches this year. I think he'll come off the bench so often for somebody just to kind of keep that. Because he's an attacking midfielder, you know, no two ways about it. And if we've got two of them starting every game, one of them will need to come off for a rest at some point, you know. And I think McKeown will be quite an important squad player this year. Again, in pre-season, if I think he's kind of up there on goal contributions or whatever, for whatever that's worth to anyone. But yeah, I make you quite right that I think Bernardo's maybe going to slot in a bit more to be in McGregor's insurance policy or his job share or however you want to think of it. And Engels is kind of in this weird spot now where he could kind of come on for anyone in terms of actually from the start if you're going to rotate the midfield or off the bench. Because again, it's the thing I've always kind of tried to say about him is like, there's not too obvious like where he fits in here. Like he's good at a lot of stuff without really excelling anywhere. So so Negren also kind of say holds up a kind of mirror to that. But I think, yeah, the midfield that we'll come to see is the best midfield three of the starting 11 for most matches, I think will be what you've just mentioned there.
Kev, you've mentioned this before with Engels in relation to we've not figured out quite what his role is yet. I was watching him again this morning, and the one thing that I wanted to see from him, Ida and Trusty, was more aggression. Did we see it during the pre-season? I think he's been told to add it to his game. I just don't think it's natural to him, Kev. I just don't think he's a naturally. He spends a lot of time getting put on his backside. He spends a lot of time drawing fouls. I want him to be the guy putting their midfielder on his backside, you know? I want him to be the metal in the midfield. I'm not sure if it's something that he can develop. It's certainly not natural to him, is it?
I think he can develop it. It's the same, but I'm a bit worried when people start saying that Bernardo is going to job share. I'm going to use Quinny's term here, job share with Callum McGregor. My God, what a drop off that is. I mean, I've watched Paulo Bernardo now for 3 seasons. I still couldn't tell you what type of midfielder he actually is. And
he thinks he's attacking. He thinks he's an attacking midfielder because he was asked the question, Kev, in a press conference, and he definitely said he's more of an attacking player. I think he's better as a McGregor style player.
I think I'm funny, and that's not true either. So that's with Engels.
You've been on fire today.
I know I wanted Engels to prove himself, but as Izavo says, I do not see where he actually fits in. It's interesting you're talking about Negren as in the midfield, where everybody kind of thought he was going to come in as a winger. That's a really interesting. That's one of the things that really annoyed me towards the end of last season, was that the lack of enjoyment and the lack of creativity coming from the middle of the park. And so if we get 2 in there with Atati and Negren, then that should be quite enjoyable, with the lack of wingers that we've currently got to actually supply that sort of creativity with the options. So we need that coming for the middle of the park. What I would say, I would want another midfielder. I still think we lack physicality in that midfield. Really, when we go to top level teams and even teams that are on our level like Rangers and that in the Scottish League and tough away game, I still think we need a physical presence in that middle of the park. But then I've been saying that for 5 seasons now and nobody's listening.
You can be an enforcer, like an enforcer, Kev, but not a dirty player. I mean, didn't get us wrong. It's about being able to boss the midfield, orchestrate that midfield. You see it all the time in the Champions League. We've been talking about it for years, Kev, like you say. And when I look at the physical aspects of each of the guys we've got in there, the one who should be able to be that guy is Engels. He should be a physical player. Look at him. He's got the stature for it. He's got the build for it. But I'm not seeing it yet. I think it's something that we're trying to embed in his game, but I don't know if it's coming all too naturally to him. It might click, but we definitely need that player. I agree with you in the midfield.
It might click. It might click with him because he's got the height. But you want your midfielders. No, they didn't need to physically dominate the game. They have to dominate the game with the ball. And both Bernardo and Engels seem to disappear for large periods of games. And you go, they actually on the pitch? What are they actually doing here? And what is the busiest area of the pitch? And you go, well, Negrin has been our box office signing in the summer so far, right? So you would like to think that he would maybe start, but it wouldn't surprise me if he came on as a sort of cameo as well. And he starts with basically with the midfield three of Kalmak, Atati and Engels.
Hope he does that. I really do. I think he deserves a start. Sushi says Yang is bang average. Well, apparently he was on his way to Norwich, but we've not really heard much about that. We are the people. 11. I'm bringing this up because it is quite tongue-in-cheek, obviously. Lovell's the invisible boss from Chewing the Fat in our boardroom, going about computers reducing the bids. Oh, I love that. I love the thought that is the case.
If anybody's got a spare hour the other day, after watching Quinny's videos and all of that, go and listen to the podcast with Ben Foster, with the Wrexham director of football. Have a listen to that, and it'll open your eyes to certain things that happen in football. And Wrexham have got a kind of similar setup to us, whereas they don't have a director of football. They don't have a director of football, but it's extremely eye-opening what he actually says, and it'll be the same at our level as well. That what happens at that level will happen at our level as well, and it's a really interesting listen.
No, I definitely will. I will check that out. On you go, Quinny.
I was going to say, just on that note, like, you guys might remember Celtic advertised in April or something like that for a first team scout or analyst or whatever. I don't know if you've even seen it, but I get tagged in it a lot, as you might have imagined. And on that kind of note on it, like, I applied for the job, I put in a solid application for it and all the rest of it. Won't give any spoilers away, but I've got a video for it coming out at 5 today. So in terms of how, we're talking about how the recruitment process works behind the scene and all the rest of it. It's you'll have a laugh watching it. It's the only thing I'll say, right? But I've maybe got my own little angle on that coming out today at some point.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, brilliant.
One of the main things that I kind of ken where Quinny will go with this, having peeked behind the curtain of the club. So I kind of know where you're going with that. But the guy for Acsom actually says, if you go in with a cheeky bid, your email will eventually start getting ignored. Says you've got to be serious in your dealings, and when you see things like that guy that Go Ahead Eagles, if that's right, then we're not really serious there, are we?
We're going right into the spam folder. Barry O'Sullivan, complacency with this board. Yes, I think that's fair, Barry. It's fair to say that. Andy Lee, I'm bringing this up because, Paul John, what's the story with DD's son taking an active role in the club? I'll tell you what my take on that is. Obviously, Dermot Desmond was asked the question whether or not he would ever sell his share in the club. And he said that it's going to obviously get passed down to Ros Desmond. Now, my issue with that is you continue in a scenario that we find ourselves in, which I spoke about earlier on in the show, where there's someone controlling the club who doesn't have a controlling stake in the club. They are the majority shareholder, but they don't have a controlling stake, yet they operate as if they do. And everybody in the boardroom just bows down to that. That's an issue. And that's something that needs to be addressed. And I think it will be addressed by larger shareholders. Very quickly, guys, tell me if you disagree with this. So I think we do start the season with Casper in goals. I'm happy with Sinisalo as his backup. Alistair Johnson back in the team the other night. He starts. Catla Vickers looking good. He was a wee bit rustier in the previous game. Left back is Kieran Tierney for me. But the interesting one is Trusty, because I was on the fence as to whether or not Trusty or Scales was that left-sided centre-half, Quinny. And Trusty all day long. And I know what you're saying about pre-season and all the rest of it, but I do think players like him, with a point to prove, has proven the point, and he starts the game for me.
Yeah, I'm on board with all that. The only question mark I would have is Alistair Johnson. Brendan said something to the tune of like him and Vickers are maybe just a wee bit behind the pack in terms of being match sharp and all the rest of it. And I think Flag Day, similar to what Kev was kind of saying with Forest, I think Flag Day is an easy game to give Anthony Ralston as well. If Alistair Johnson's maybe a wee bit rusty, he can start an important match. But not that it's all about sentiment or whatever, but it is squad management, and Ralston is like clearly the second choice right back. And that could be like I say, like an important match for him to play to kind of keep him on side. Not that, again, that's the thing that you're trying to achieve or whatever, but I think you know what I'm trying to babble about. But otherwise, I think the back four will kind of fall in line with what you've said there, but maybe Ralston could start this one.
Yeah, another player who's done pretty well, other than the Ajax game, which I don't think many people did. Get past marks. Kev, how do you line up the back five?
You have to go with Schmeichel and goals. Alistair Johnson for 60 minutes. Then you're bringing on Ralston, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Trusty. It'll be an interesting test for them because I've no watched St Mirren at all this season, but if it's anything like last season, they're going to be landing the Giants again, and they're going to be they're going to have a physical front line who will test Trusty and Cameron Carter-Vickers. That's seemingly I read a report of the Dundee United side, and seemingly they're all 6 foot now, and not a Scotsman in it. And Jimmy Goodwin's been quite critical of the talent that Scotland's producing, which I found a wee bit interesting. And you've got Tierney basically at the left back slot. After that, you're taking the gamble with Scales, and you're taking a gamble with Dame Murray. So I think he's going to go with Cameron Carter-Vickers and Trusty. And we'll see where it goes. And it will be interesting to see if Dane Murray actually replaces Scales in the pecking order.
He's done well in the pre-season, Kev. He's definitely favoured by
It's his physicality.
Yep, and he's worked on it.
He's worked on it.
He's worked on it. And I think there is a spot there, though. There is a spot, maybe 5th choice, that Stephen Welsh currently holds, who can be replaced, and that's perhaps where we're going with Casper. Is it Jasper? We're going to have a Casper and a Jasper in the team. GSP, as Kev has christened him. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Lots to discuss. We're not entitled. We're not spoiled. We just want what's best for Celtic. Let us know if you agree or disagree with any of the points raised on today's show. And if you want to come to our next event in 3 weeks' time, it's with Manny of Primal Scream and Stone Roses fame. And we have an addition to the bill, which will be put out in the socials later on today at some stage, and that is that Resurrection, the best and most long-standing Stone Roses tribute band, will be giving us a set for an hour before Manny comes on, Kev. So
nice.
Who knows? Manny has played with them in the past. That's all I'm saying. He has played bass with Resurrection, who at one point were called the Complete Stone Roses. A tremendous band, a great tribute. What a night it's going to be. And Manny is a Celtic fan. We'll be talking all about that as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And thank you to Kev and Quinny for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, lads.